Open up the newest monster manual and turn to the letter H, and you'll find the half-dragon, a hulking, scale-armoured warrior standing on a horde, and the very first line of its lore tells you something strange. These creatures are not born, they are made, created through magical rites involving the essences of dragons, mostly by chromatic Wyrms who want servants carrying a little trace of their own might and grandeur, commanders of their armies, agents sent into lands where their master's shadow would draw a bit too much attention. Now, wind the clock back to 1994, and that exact same name meant something almost completely opposite. It meant a child, the forbidden half-secret offspring of a metallic dragon in mortal guise, and one of the elven, dwarven, or gnomish vassals sworn to its clan, the demi-human servant races of the Dragon Lords, a child dragonkind considered repugnant and the vassal peoples never quite trusted, born between two worlds and welcome in neither. And in the oldest lore, the sages were always careful to draw a hard line between the true half-dragon, a natural crossbreed, a child of two bloodlines, and the draconians of the Dragonlance saga, humanoid creatures manufactured by corrupting dragon eggs and dark rituals. One was born, the other was built, and that distinction was the entire point. 30 years later, and the half-dragon of the current rules is the built thing. The name has migrated across every edition and half a dozen worlds, from the child to the construct. So, how did that happen? The answer runs through an island empire ruled by dragon lords, through the pages of Dragon Magazine, through Waterdeep and the Underdark, the rivers of Karatur, through a template so powerful the game had to invent whole new rule structures just to let you play one, and finally through the quiet dissolution of the concept itself and its rebirth as something new. So, settle back, grab yourself a tasty beverage. It's time to get deeply nerdy, because this is the complete guide to the half-dragon. Before we get to the birth of the half-dragon, there's a question that needs answering first. Dungeons & Dragons had dragons in the title from the very first box in 1974, so why did it take 20 years for anyone to publish a half-dragon? The answer, I think, is that for those first 2 decades, dragons had nothing to make half-dragons with. Go back through everything printed from 1974 to 1993, and the dragon is a solitary apex monster. Its ecology is territory, age categories, treasure hoards, and combat encounters. Even when the metallic dragons were given the power to take human form, that power was presented as a tool for disguise, diplomacy, and quiet observation, not as the basis for families. Dragons had no governments, no organized civilization, no family structures worth the name, almost nothing written about courtship or reproduction, no culture at all beyond alignment stereotypes. And Tactical Studies Rules, or TSR, the creators and publishers of the game, were surprisingly conservative about hybrid creatures in general. The hybrids of early D&D came from mythology, magical mishaps, or from divine curses. The game generally avoided the subject except in the cases of the half-elf and the half-orc, because Tolkien had already included them in the Lord of the Rings literature. They were already established in fantasy. But there were no comparable Western literary traditions of dragon-blooded children for the game to inherit. So the question just sat there, unasked, for 20 years. I say Western tradition deliberately because there is one exception that proves the rule. Asian folklore is rich with dragon ancestry and human bloodlines, emperors and heroes tracing descent from river dragons, and sure enough, when TSR published Oriental Adventures in 1985, in it were the spirit folk, humanoids, descended from the spirits of nature, and in Eastern mythology, dragons are exactly that, nature spirits, divine powers of rivers, lakes, rainfall, and the sea. So, the river spirit folk tied to their ancestral waterways carry dragon blood by definition. Where a real mythic tradition of dragon-blooded mortals existed, the game adopted it almost immediately. Where none existed, the concept had to wait until D&D gave dragons something they'd never had before: a society. That society arrived in 1994 with the Council of Wyrms box set for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, written by Bill Slavicsek and published by TSR, later revised and reprinted as a hardcover in 1999. And if you've never had the pleasure, Council of Wyrms was, and still is, a unique experiment. It won the Origins Award for Best Role-Playing Adventure of 1994. It's available in digital format these days if you want to read it yourself. And the whole premise is that the players are the dragons. Gold, silver, bronze, the great clans of Io's Blood Isles. An island chain formed, so the legend goes, where the blood of the dragon god fell into the sea, and the mighty council that keeps all those proud, territorial, extremely well-armed clans from tearing each other apart. And critically for our story, the dragons of the Isles do not live alone. Living along with them is the demi-human vassal races, the kindred, elves and dwarves and gnomes bound to service to the dragon clans. Suddenly, dragons had politics, laws, clan histories, mating flights, and daily contact with demi-humans who served them. And they had scandals. The lore is precise about how a half-dragon comes to be, and the restrictions tell you a great deal about how the designers thought about dragons. First, only metallic dragons produce half-dragon offspring in this setting, and only 3 kinds of them: the gold, the silver, and the bronze. The union happens when a male dragon, wearing a mortal shape through his innate polymorph power, fathers a child with a demi-human vassal. Second, the door only swings one way. A male dragon in humanoid form can father a child with a demi-human woman, but a female dragon cannot conceive by a demi-human male, no matter what shape she wears. The law offers no apology and no explanation for the asymmetry. It simply is. Only a dragon's natural polymorph ability, the innate gift of its blood, can produce offspring. The dragon who takes mortal form using a polymorph spell fathers nothing at all. So a red dragon or a shadow dragon with a spell in its repertoire is out of luck. There is something in the natural power, some essence carried through it that spellcraft cannot counterfeit. And I want you to hold on to that idea, the idea that half-dragons come from the transmission of draconic essence, because it's going to echo down the entire history, and it will be standing there waiting for us at the very end. Now, for all the precision of the biology, Dragon Society wanted absolutely nothing to do with the results. Creating half-dragons was considered repugnant among dragonkind, and the lore is clear that this holds even where there is a genuine love. A dragon may truly love a mortal mate, but the dragon societies of almost any land find the idea of half-dragon children intolerable, and the vassal communities looked at them with unease from the other direction. So half-dragon young are rare everywhere. The half-dragon is defined from the cradle as an outsider, an outcast to dragons and demi-humans alike, and they have no official place in draconic society, even in the setting where they are the most commonly found. The fear of discovery runs so deep that expectant mothers commonly leave their homes, fled before birth, never to return, taking refuge in the lair of the child's father. At birth, you might not even know what you were looking at. A newborn half-dragon takes the physical form of its mortal parent and shows few definitive marks, perhaps only eyes or hair of an unusual color, gold, silver, or bronze. The gleam of the father's scales surfacing in a child's face. Through childhood, they pass for their mother's people. Then adolescence arrives, and the dragon blood wakes up. As they grow towards adulthood, the heritage starts to assert itself, and the lore uses the language of dominance, the draconic inheritance overwhelming the lesser genes. The mature half-dragon is tall and lean, slender-framed and pointed-eared, elf-like no matter which mortal stock they were actually born from, with skin that keeps the look and texture of normal flesh but takes on the pigmentation of their draconic parent, golden, silver, or bronze tinged. and thick, lustrous hair in a deeper shade of the same. The fingers are long and thin and with nails like talons, and then there's the face, which is where the dragon truly lives, unmistakably reptilian, snake-like eyes, elongated features, the barest hint of horns pushing at the temples. But mark what they don't have. No wings, no tail, no thick, scaled hide. The original half-dragon is not the scaled dragon man that later editions made familiar. It's something quieter, and frankly more unsettling. A person with a dragon looking out through their face. Beautiful by all accounts, but the sources are careful to say that the beauty is an alien one, not entirely along human or demi-human standards. They are long-lived too, a proportion of their potency of their blood. A half gold can expect more than 300 years of life, a half silver 250, and a half bronze 200. The single most distinctive idea in the original design, the one that separates this first half-dragon from every other version that came after, is the metamorphosis. A half-dragon is not born with its dragon powers, it grows into them. At 2nd, 4th, and 6th level, the character selects a discretionary ability, a power drawn from the dragon parent's repertoire. Water breathing, speaking with animals, the blessed gift, dragon fear, immunities, infravision. The list varies by bloodline, and these abilities strengthen with time and use. Each one, though, replaces one of the character's existing demi-human racial abilities. Take water breathing at 2nd level, and you might watch it supersede your elven infravision. The dragon does not add to itself to the mortal, it displaces the mortal. The identity crisis of the crossbreed written directly into the level progression. 2 more abilities arrive in one on fixed schedule and at the same price, each supplementing 1 more of whatever demi-human abilities remain. And at 5th level, the talons become true weapons, granting claw attacks, and at 7th level comes the breath weapon, a fine spray of fire or cold or lightning by bloodline, usable twice a day. There, the metamorphosis ends, the half-dragon at full maturity, still obviously humanoid, now just as obviously kin to dragons, and never the equal of the full-blooded worm. Mechanically, at the table, the half-dragon of 1994 was built like any other AD&D demi-human, with the draconic thumb pressed on the scales. They rolled ability scores by the standard methods, honest 3d6 if your table is old-fashioned, and then applied adjustments by bloodline, and the 3 adjustment packages are little portraits of 3 parent dragons. The half gold gets +2 to strength and +1 charisma and -2 wisdom. The blood of the greatest of the metallic dragons, bringing a power and presence, but with them a certain arrogance, a deficit of judgment. The half silver gets +1 strength and +1 constitution with -1 intelligence. Hardy and strong, a little slow. And the half bronze dragon gets +1 strength, +1 dexterity, and +1 wisdom, the only one of the 3 with no penalty at all. So make of that what you will about bronze dragons. They could take up to 5 classes: cleric, fighter, mage, ranger, or thief. 1 class only, no multi-classing, and no dual classing, with level limits that varied by bloodline in the ground 2nd edition tradition, though a half-dragon with exceptional primate requisites could push past those caps under the standard rules. So everything I've described assumes a demi-human mother, but what about a half-dragon born to a human? A half-dragon of human stock begins with nothing, because humans in the AD&D framework have no innate racial abilities, so there's nothing for the early metamorphosis to replace. That's a weaker start by a good margin, but the design compensates with a longer road. Because where the demi-human-blooded half-dragon's gifts stop arriving at 6th level, the human-blooded half-dragon keeps receiving those draconic abilities at every even-numbered level beyond 6th, on and on until they hit their class's level cap or simply run out of abilities to take. And the sources say plainly that given enough time, the human-blooded half-dragon is likely to end up the more powerful of the 2 varieties. Second edition loved its character kits, those packages of role, background, and circumstance layered over a class, and while the Half-Dragon could use most of the kits of the era, the concept came with 2 kits all of its own. The first is the Exile, the Half-Dragon cast out of the community they were born into, whose mixed heritage betrayed itself early despite the mother's secrecy. The Exile becomes a self-reliant wanderer, usually a thief because the road teaches its own skills, desperately hoping for a community that will accept them while carrying a deep hatred for the ones that didn't, never staying anywhere long, because eventually the true nature always shows, and it's better to leave on your own terms than be banished twice. They start play with almost nothing. They take a hefty penalty to how strangers react to them, and the communities that do tolerate them tend to use them for theft, for spying, for carrying messages nobody respectable would carry. The second kit is the Ward, the half-dragon who was not abandoned, or who was reclaimed, a character with a wealthy patron, usually the dragon parent. Though the roles note it might just as easily be a government, a guild, or a criminal organization. The patron provides wealth, a home, and tasks, and the lore is refreshingly cynical about the arrangement, noting that nobody does this out of charity, and that some patrons keep their wards on a deliberately short leash so they never quite gain the freedom to strike out on their own. The ward wants nothing except that freedom, because a dragon's patronage is never free, and a dragon's errands are not refused. Cast out or kept on a leash. Those are the 2 lives the original design imagined for its half-dragons, and nearly every half-dragon story told in the 30 years since falls, if you look at it closely, on either one side or the other of that line. And TSR was not finished, because the box set was only half of the launch. The very same month the box shipped, June of 1994, Dragon Magazine issue 206 ran its annual Dragon Special, and in it was an article by Roger E. Moore called Part Dragon, All Hero, a deliberate companion piece that took the half-dragon rules out of Io's Blood Isles and asked the question, can there be half-dragons on other worlds of the game? The half-dragons didn't spread gradually across the multiverse over the years of supplements. It was designed to spread from day one by TSR's own in-house magazine, and Moore's article is where the Greyhawk dragons of Earth, the tragic silver dragons of Krynn, the secret of little society in the sewers and spires of Waterdeep, and the river spirit folk of Karatur all enter the story. That article is an absolute treasure chest, and it's where we're headed next. Moore opens by placing the half-dragon in a longer tradition. See, TSR had been widening the frontier of what players were allowed to be for a decade, from the Drow and the Deep Gnomes of the Unearthed Arcana rules expansion, through the Kendar of Dragonlance and the Half-Giants of Darksun, and even the Zixstil, the surgical insect folk of the Spelljamming setting, all the way to 1993's Complete Book of Humanoids, which handed players everything from ogres to lizard folk. Playing a dragon in Council of Wyrms was the boldest step yet taken down that road. Moore's objective was to work out, world by world, how half-dragons fitted in. Before the Tour of Worlds, though, Moore states that the mothers of half-dragons must be either humans, elves, half-elves, drow, dwarves, halflings, gnomes, or kender, and the monstrous races of orc, half-orc, goblinoids, centaurs, giants, and ogres are all effectively infertile with dragonkind, and some dragon breeds that could potentially produce half-dragon offspring are flatly ruled out because the results would just be too powerful for the gaming table. There will be no half-platinum children of Bahamut, no half-adamantite offspring from the Twin Paradises, no half-radiant dragons of Wildspace, and the Star Sea of the Spelljammer setting. Moore sums up the draconic attitude towards the mortal races in a joking way, saying dragons would breed with humanoids about as readily as Zeus would have a romantic liaison with a very intelligent hamster. This would all change 6 years later, but more on that in a minute. The tour itself begins on Earth, the world of Greyhawk, and it opens with a surprise because the first world Moore visits is the one where being a dragon, or half-dragon, is actually good for you. The city of Greyhawk is cosmopolitan, mercantile, and ruthlessly practical. And in a culture that respects power, dragon blood is social capital. People treated a half-dragon well for the most sensible of reasons. The dragon parent might be watching and might do favours. The biology is narrower than the Isles. Only Oath's gold and silver dragons can take humanoid form at all, and the local bronzes being limited to the shapes of higher mammals. And the results are vanishingly rare. 2 half-golds known in 500 years, and those two were twins. A half-silver is rumoured to be operating as a ranger, spy, and saboteur in the lands of Ayuz, the demon god tyrant of the Flaness. And then there is the local specialty, because Earth is home to the Greyhawk dragon, a city-dwelling, shape-shifting cousin of the steel dragons that spends most of its time in humanoid form among humans, and which Moore notes is nearly as likely to take a non-dragon consort as a dragon one. At any given time, about a dozen half-Greyhawk dragons live in the city, most of them quietly employed by their own draconic parents, and rumour holds that a member of the Circle of Eight, the cabal of mages, archmages that steers Oath's fate, has dragon blood in its veins. Kryn, the world of Dragonlance, gives the opposite answer, and it's the saddest one in the article. On Kryn, there's no interbreeding at all. The gold and silver dragons can take humanoid form. Only the silvers actually enjoy doing it, but a dragon in mortal guise cannot conceive a child there. Full stop. The only path to a half-dragon on Kryn runs through a god, Paladine. The platinum father of good dragons can permanently transform a silver dragon into a human half-elf or elf. It's a gift granted for love of some exceptional mortal champion. And legend says this is exactly the choice offered to the silver dragon who loved Huma, the greatest knight of the age, and that she refused it. The children of such a union are not half-dragons in any mechanical sense at all. They're born fully mortal of their mother's apparent race, but with silver hair and silver eyes, a talent that usually lets them understand and be understood in any spoken language, and a slight edge on all their natural gifts. No claws, no breath weapon, no metamorphosis. Krynish society, for its parts, reacts to the very idea of a dragon-mortal romance with horror, and the silver-haired children will generally keep their ancestry to themselves. The Forgotten Realms sits somewhere between the two, and Moore has Elminster of Shadowdale, the realm's great chronicler, set the scale. Barely 24 genuine half-dragons in 1,000 years, alongside an unknown number of charlatans who invented a draconic parent just for the notoriety. The realm's bronzes, unlike their cousins on Earth and Kryn, can take humanoid form, so all 3 classic bloodlines occur, and the realms adds 2 of its own. The Steel Dragon, also called the Waterdeep Dragon, detailed in the realm's own Draconomicon supplement in 1990, is kin to the Greyhawk Dragon and shares its taste for city life and mortal company. And in Waterdeep, its half-blood children have quietly organised. About a dozen half-steel dragons form a loose fellowship called the Confluence, bankrolled by patrons who are usually their own dragon parents, moving through the city in magical disguise or awe-concealing robes, running missions in the family interest, and sometimes hiring novice adventurers who never learn who their employer really is. And in the deep places below, the Underdark's deep dragons have crossed with the Drow exactly twice in recorded history. One of the 2 Drow dragons slain young by Drow rivals, and the other possibly still alive down there in the dark, a creature of corrosive breath and slow regeneration, whose odds of ever turning to good Moore rates as minuscule. Karatur is where the article performs its annexation. The river spirit folk, in print since 1985 as descendants of nature spirits, are here formally identified as half-dragons, and the offsprings of Qianglong and Shenlong river dragons and their human lovers. And everything about them inverts the Western pattern. The daughters of the Qianlong find humans fascinating and sometimes marry them against their father's wishes, and their children gravitate to the samurai's path, famed for duty and the pursuit of perfection, some rising to lead their human clans. The Shenlong supplied the one true exception to Moore's males-only law because both male and female Shenlong take human partners, and their offspring tend towards the wandering warrior's life. Chaotic, but honourable. And dragon ancestry in Karatua is a badge of honour, not a stain, which Moore credits to two things: the famous beauty of the spirit folk and the dragon's revered place in the celestial bureaucracy, the divine civil service of the Eastern cosmology. The cost of the honour is the river itself. A spirit folk's characters' moods rise and fall with the condition of their ancestral waterway. Bathing in it closes their wounds and cures their diseases, and when the dragon parent calls, they must answer without question every time. Mechanically, they're the gentlest of all the half-dragons. No ability adjustments, no metamorphosis, just a fixed package of water gifts, and they take the samurai, bushi, or kensai character kits of the oriental rules rather than anything western, including the exile, which can never apply to them since no one in Karatua would ever dream of casting them out. Two last notes round out that article. The Radiant Dragon of Wild Space, the great serpent of the void between the crystal spheres, can take humanoid form but despises mammals far too much to ever produce offspring. And to show that the concept can stretch to any dragon in print, Moore closes with one more playable type, the half-iron dragon, child of the iron dragon from the Ferris family, introduced in Dragon Magazine issue 170. Dragons I've covered on this channel before. The half-iron is strong, tough, and a little slow-witted, with a breath weapon that is a spray of burning sparks, the option of total fire immunity, and a lifespan of over 400 years, the longest of any half-dragon in the article, outliving even the children of gold dragons. And that is the state of the half-dragon at the end of 1994. It exists, officially, across 5 worlds and 1 island empire, always rare, usually hidden, welcome almost nowhere except the mercantile city of Oerth and the riverbanks of Karatua, 3 classic bloodlines and a scattering of strange cousins, every one of them fenced in by Moore's careful genetics. And then, for the rest of the decade, almost nothing. The concept sleeps through the late 2nd edition era until the year 2000 arrives. A new company owns Dungeons & Dragons. A new edition rewrites the game from its foundations, and every single rule you've just heard, the metallic-only rule, the males-only rule, the short list of permitted mothers and banned races, the forbidden dragons, all of it gets thrown out at once. The change, when it came from the new owner, Wizards of the Coast, the Magic the Gathering company that had purchased the struggling TSR in 1997, launching the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons in the year 2000, rebuilt from its foundations. And one of the new edition's favourite pieces of technology was the template, a set of modifications you could lay over any existing creature to transform it. Celestial and fiendish templates made holy and unholy versions of ordinary animals. The lycanthrope template made werewolves of ordinary people, and there, in the very first monster manual, was the new era set, the half-dragon template. The restrictions of Moore's article did not survive contact with it. Any of the 10 true dragons could now be the parent, the 5 metallics, and for the first time in the concept's history, the 5 chromatics. So the game now had half-red dragons, half-black dragons, half-green dragons, children of tyrants and swamp lurkers and poisoners, and the other parent could be virtually any living creature. The new edition's dragons were, in the game's own memorable phrasing, notoriously virile, capable of crossbreeding with almost anything that lived. What the template built was also a different creature to look at. The 3rd edition half-dragon has scales, it has exaggerated teeth, elongated claws, and if the creature is larger or bigger, it has wings and it flies, where the original half-dragon was a scaleless, wingless person with a dragon looking out through their face. The new half-dragon is a dragon man, its base creature still recognizable underneath, but armored and fanged and unmistakable at 50 paces, and the bigger specimens fly overhead on draconic wings. The powers changed to match. The half-dragon now gets 2 claw attacks and a bite, dark vision and low light vision, immunity to sleep and paralysis and to the energy type of its heritage, a breath weapon keyed to its parent, and a staggering set of ability increases. +8 strength, +2 constitution, +2 intelligence, +2 charisma, and every bit of it is present at the moment of its birth. The metamorphosis is gone, nothing awakens at adolescence, nothing is grown into level by level, nothing displaces that mortal inheritance. The 3rd edition Half-Dragon simply hatches with the full package installed. And as for the parents, the lore is brisk. Most dragons, especially the chromatics, abandon their half-blood offspring to the other parents' care, the metallics telling themselves the children are far better among humanoids, and the chromatics simply not caring. All that power carried a price tag, and the price tag nearly made the concept unplayable. The 3rd edition priced powerful races through a mechanism called level adjustment, and the half-dragons was +3, meaning a half-dragon counted as 3 levels higher than it really was. Your first level half-dragon fighter was treated by the game as a 4th level character, earning experience points like one, while owning the hit points and abilities of the first level one, and the gap never closes. The 2003 sourcebook Savage Species, a book dedicated entirely to playing monsters as player characters, was candid about the problem, observing that very few players want to be an effective 5th level character with only 2 hit dice. Savage Species is also where the ghost of Council of Wyrms walks again. The book's flagship idea is the monster class, which lets a player take a powerful creature's abilities gradually, level by level, growing into the monster over a course of play instead of paying for it all up front. That is the Metamorphosis of 1994 reborn in a new edition's language, with one difference. The original Half-Dragon's draconic gifts replaced its demi-human abilities one by one, the dragon displacing the mortal, and that was the whole tragedy of the design. The monster class just adds. A troll or an ogre taken level by level loses nothing along the way because there's no second inheritance in it to consume. For the Half-Dragon specifically, Savage Species classifies the template as intermediate, breaking that +3 level adjustment into +2 for the template itself and a further +1 for the color of the parent. And it demonstrates the new universality with a cheerful lack of restraint. The templates stack, so the book presents the Half-Dragon Ogre, whose strength adjustment totals +18. The template can even be applied to other true dragons, the book's own example being a half-red black dragon, a sentence that would give Roger Moore a headache, and it defends the heavy costs with arithmetic, noting that a half-gold's cone of fire deals 6d8, an average of 27 damage, where an 8th level wizard's fireball averages 28. The dragon's breath at 1st level for nearly a wizard's career worth of power. So by 2003, the template age could make a half-dragon out of anything in the game, and had gleefully. Personally, I think this was one of the best additions to 3.5 edition that exists, a game mechanic that just kicked the door wide open to so many different character possibilities and marks what was arguably the most permissive conceptual era the game has ever had. But while it gave us so many new options, it was impossible for it to go into the fine detail of how these options impacted and interacted with the established world settings. What none of it provided since 1994 was a life, how these people think, what they want, where they live, who they love. That arrived in 2006 in the book that quietly became one of the true homes of Half-Dragon lore, and it brought the strangest collection of dragon relatives the game has ever printed. That book is Races of the Dragon, published in 2006, and it's wall-to-wall dragon blood. This is the book that introduces the Dragonborn, and I want you to note them carefully, even though we'll keep this brief, because these are not the race of Dragonborn that we have today. The Dragonborn of Bahamut are not born at all. They are volunteers, mortals of any race, who undertake the rite of rebirth, a ritual of transformation that remakes them, scales, breath and all, as chosen servants of the Platinum Dragon. And the book states plainly that they are sterile, their draconic nature ending with them. The game's first dragon people who are made rather than born. And this book also gives us the kobolds that proudly claim draconic descent, and it introduces a new second race entirely, the Spellscales. The Spellscales are dragon blood with no dragon in sight. When two humanoid sorcerers have a child together, that child can be born a spell scaled, draconic, and hungry for magic, whatever the reasons of its parents. The old theory that sorcery itself is diluted dragon blood is made flesh, and spell scale unions breed true. Every child, a full spell scale, a viable, distinct species spontaneously manifesting out of scattered heritage. In some ways, they sit closer to the original half-dragons of Council of Wyrms than anything else in this era. People in whom the dragon simply surfaces, and they mark a new fork in the spectrum of dragon heritage. The half-dragon with a worm for a parent, the draconic creature with one of a few generations back, and now the spell scale, proof that dragon blood, even diluted almost to nothing, can still become dominant. The chapter on dragon-descended life is where the loneliness of the crossbreed gets its texture. Half-dragons, it tells us, grow up isolated and gifted, so they develop solitary pursuits and a taste for testing themselves against ever greater challenges. They inherit the family materialism in full, collectors par excellence, their obsessions mirroring the parent, half blue hoarding gems and half gold turning into an art connoisseur. They crave knowledge and build libraries as extensive as they can afford, sometimes being called a bookworm, though rarely to their face. Others turn epicure, if not outright glutton, chasing rare delicacies across the world. They take naturally to the sorcerers' and bards' paths, their blood being magic. A half-dragon rogue keeps a breath weapon in reserve to discourage pursuit. The barbarian suits the outcast rage, and their possessive draconic hearts make love a complicated business. Small wonder the book also describes dragon-descended encampments, like travelling communities of the dragon-blooded keeping to the edges of society, safest in each other's company, outside of a city where their moods, rages, and possessive passions can play out without landing them in a jail cell or rotting in a cage hung from the city walls. The book even resurrects the oldest idea in the concept's history, a third time now. The draconic racial class lets a player begin as an ordinary member of any race and grow into the dragon blood across 4 levels. Minor gifts first, then claws and dark vision, then a weak breath weapon and a bite, and finally, at 4th level, the full half-dragon template. Breath weapon, dragon type, wings and all. The complete transformation arriving through play. 1994's Metamorphosis, 2003's Monster Class, and 2006's Racial Class. 3 editions, 3 rule systems, same concept. For the template itself, the book extends it to every true dragon printed in the game to that date, explicitly superseding the earlier expanded list in 3.5's own Draconomicon, and the results run from the majestic to the deeply weird. The half-fang dragon trades the breath weapon away entirely for a bite that drains constitution. The half-children of the Pan Lung and Shen Lung command water fire, a ghostly aura of multicolored flame that scorches anyone who strikes them while they touch water. The half-topaz breathes dehydration itself, and the half-chaos dragon breathes pure randomness, a different destructive energy every time. It's a comprehensive list. And then there's the rite of draconic affinity, a ritual that trades one draconic heritage for another. For the half-dragon who cannot live with their own blood, the book's examples being a half-black dragon, paladin, desperate to escape his cruel father's legacy, and a sorcerer who resents the gold dragon blood of his mother holding him back from spite and ambition. For a day and a night, the character fasts and meditates, anointing themselves with oils distilled from the essence of the dragon kind they wish to become. 5,000 gold pieces worth. And I wonder what the hell that is, actually. The rite must be performed by a dragon or half-dragon of that desired kind, who has arcane training, and in that final minute, the participant stands willingly in the blast of the conductor's breath weapon, as it washes over them and wounds them. The old kind sheds away and the new kind takes hold. The character emerges as much a half-dragon as ever, just of a different dragon type, and the chosen kind must sit within one step of the character's own alignment. In the Forgotten Realms Underdark, Moor's two lonely drow dragons acquired ancient company, because the Underdark sourcebook of 2003 reveals Chalsin, the city of Wyrm shadows, a drow city conquered and enslaved by shadow dragons 1,500 years ago, and ruled by Wyrms for centuries, until the dragons were overthrown by their own half-drow, half-dragon children, slave-born progeny who mastered planar magic and turned on their fathers. Their descendants endure as the Jezred Chalsin, a secretive house of drow assassins working for the Shadow Wreath ruins. On Eberron, the setting that arrived in 2004, half-dragons are abominations by draconic lore itself. Dragons of Eberron gives us Erendis Vol, the game's most consequential half-dragon, child of an emerald dragon line and the elven line of Vol, bearers of the Mark of Death. Her allies claimed the union would forge a bond to end the ancient wars between dragon and elf. Others believed the dragon simply wanted the Mark of Death bred into offspring they controlled. What she actually achieved was uniting elves and dragons at last in the single shared cause of exterminating her entire bloodline, a war she only survived as a lich, and Eberron's Blood of Vol religion is her long shadow. The same book gives us Ailokar, the city of knowledge in Argonison, which opens its gates to nearly every intelligent race except two, the Yuan-Ti and half-dragons. Not out of hatred, but because the dragons of the interior are so committed to destroying half-blood scions that Sheltering One invites annihilation. And it gives us the half-dragon Rakshasas, fiends bearing dragon blood, serving as go-between emissaries for the imprisoned daughter of Khyber, Eberron's Tiamat, and cheerfully playing every side. Kryn, meanwhile, contributed its own dark mirror in the Fifth Age era, the Dragon Spawn, mortals corrupted body and mind into draconic shapes by the dragon overlords to serve as their monstrous slaves. So by 2007, the half-dragon has a template that reaches every dragon ever printed, a racial class to grow into, an interior life of libraries and treasuries and complicated love, cousins ranging from sorceress-born spell scales to god-made dragonborn, cities that fear it, assassin dynasties descended from it, and a magical rite that can rewrite its very blood. 13 years from Council of Wyrms and the Child of Two Worlds have never been richer. Then, in 2008, 4th edition arrives and just lays waste to all of it. 4th edition has no place for the half-dragon at all. No templates, no racial class, the entire apparatus gone. In its place, promoted all the way into the core player's handbook, stood the Dragonborn. But these were not the Dragonborn of 2006. The rite of rebirth was gone. The sterility was gone. Bahamut's remade volunteers were gone. 4th edition's Dragonborn are a race in their own right, a people, proud and honourable warriors carrying ancient blood ties to dragonkind. In the edition's new core world, the Points of Light setting, the last human empire of Narath fell a century past and civilization survives as scattered lights in a monster-haunted dark, and the Dragonborn walk that dark as heirs of Arcosia, a mighty draconic empire of the distant past that annihilated itself in a centuries-long war against Baal Turath, the infernal empire of the Tieflings, each dragging the other into oblivion. So the Dragonborn of 2008 had no homeland, only an imperial memory that still shapes their culture, and they wander everywhere, integrating into every society they meet. This is the Dragonborn that today's players would recognize, and its arrival ended the half-dragon's tenure as the game's dragon-blooded character concept. Why bother working out a crossbreed when you can simply be born a dragon person? Where 4th edition's dragon imagination went instead was outward. The edition introduced catastrophic dragons, the living embodiments of primordial disaster, earthquake dragons and volcanic dragons, the scourge dragons or Lenorms, wingless serpents of affliction and brute melee, and whole families of planar dragons steeped in the Abyss and the Feywild and the Shadowfell. And down at the humble end it defined the drakes, wild, aggressive reptiles that could be captured and trained as mounts and guardians. Then, in 2014, 5th edition arrived, and the half-dragon crept back into the game through the monster manual. Humbled. It gets a single page. The template is simple now, layered onto a beast, humanoid, giant or monstrosity, blind sight and dark vision, damage resistance by colour, the draconic tongue, the breath weapon scaled to the creature's size, and the half-red dragon veteran as the working example. A human soldier in plate with a cone of fire. It's a monster building tool, presented with challenge rating instructions for the Dungeon Master rather than as a player race. And the opening lines of its lore quietly break a 21-year-old lore. A half-dragon, they say, can be born when a polymorphed dragon mates with another creature, or created by a mad wizard spell, or by a ritual bath in dragon's blood. For the first time in the concept's history, being made is listed alongside being born as just another way of dragons happening. And either way, the result is described the same. The creature combining the essence of a dragon with the form of its original race. The 2014 half-dragon is sterile, incapable of natural offspring, propagating only through magic, the same rule the 2006 Dragonborn carried. It lives roughly twice as long as its mortal life, a human half-dragon passing a century and a half, a faint echo of those Council of Wyrms lifespan tables, and it inherits the personality of its dragon side. Half golds, shy and secretive, half coppers, impish, half greens, deceitful, half whites, dim-witted brutes, with greed, arrogance, and paranoia stalking even the good aligned. 5th edition's player-facing Dragon Blood went to the Dragonborn, and in 2021, Fizban's Treasure of Dragons finished the thought. The book gives the Dragonborn 3 variant lineages, chromatic, metallic, and gem. The gem Dragonborn arriving alongside the return of the gem dragons themselves, with telepathy and spectral wings in their inheritance. Each lineage a player option with real mechanical teeth to its ancestry. And for everyone else, the book severs draconic power from parentage entirely. Its way of the ascended dragon monk can breathe the destructive energy and unfurl spectral wings, and the origin table offers reasons like studying at a monastery founded on a dragon's teachings, or simply meditating for years near an ancient dragon's lair, soaking in the ambient magic. In its Drake Warden Ranger bonds with a Drake companion, 4th edition's trained beast grown into a soul-bound draconic spirit, hatching perhaps from a gemstone a dragon left in your care, or awakened by a swallowed few drops of dragon blood. Its draconic feats manifest in the book's own framing from a dragon's gift, a dragon's blessing, a distant heritage, or as a consequence of slaying a dragon, and its table of draconic character ties offers 10 ways a hero might be bound to dragonkind, of which an actual dragon ancestor is exactly one. Nowhere in the books is there a half-dragon. By 2021, dragonness in Dungeons & Dragons is ambient, a power that can be inherited, gifted, studied, absorbed, or taken as a trophy, and the crossbreed child that started this whole story has no niche left to fill. Which brings us back, at last, to where we began. The 2024 Monster Manual's half-dragon, the hulking warrior on its horde, born through magical rites involving the essences of dragons, created mostly by chromatic Wyrms who want servants carrying a trace of their own might and grandeur to command their lesser minions and to operate as agents in lands where a dragon's presence would draw unwanted attention. They inherit the personality and the agenda of the dragon whose essence made them, and those with chromatic traits typically loathe their creator even as they pursue the same goals. The metallic-tinged ones are rarer still, arising from magical accidents, the efforts of reckless magic users, or the last act of a dying dragon. Parentage is gone. Mating, polymorphed or otherwise, is gone. The 2014 entry's afterthought, the Mad Wizard's spell and the ritual bath, has become the entire origin, and the crossbreed has become a made thing, a warrior manufactured from a draconic essence to serve. To hold it up beside the draconians of Dragonlance, the corrupted egg soldiers that 1994 sages were so careful to distinguish from the true born half-dragon, and the distinction has simply dissolved. And that idea, the essence that has been the thread the entire time, in 1994, only a dragon's natural polymorph could father a half-dragon, because the innate power carried something a mere spell could not counterfeit. In 2006, oils distilled from the essence of a dragonkind and a willing baptism in dragon fury could rewrite a half-dragon's very lineage. In 2024, rites involving the essence of dragons are how the half-dragons come to exist at all. The game spent 30 years slowly discovering that what makes a half-dragon was never really the parent, it was the essence. And once the essence could be bottled, distilled, or ritually applied, the dragon parent became optional, then vestigial, then gone. So that is the whole story. A concept born in 1994 from the first setting that gave dragons a society, spread across 5 worlds within a month by its own designers, thrown open to every creature alive by the 2000 template, engineered and priced and stacked through savage species, given a life, a spectrum of cousins and heritage rewriting right in 2006, annihilated by the Dragonborn in 2008, resurrected as a humbled monster tool in 2014, rendered obsolete by ambient dragon magic in 2021, and reborn in 2024 as the very kind of made creature it was originally defined against. The half-dragon began as a child no one wanted and ended as a weapon someone built, and every step between the two is in a book you can still read. Before I go, one more thing, and this one's personal. The fellow behind this next product is someone I know personally. We met recently at my local D&D club and quickly discovered we share a love of sculpting and modding games miniatures. And it turns out he's a veteran hand sculptor who spent years making the classic terrain and scenery for Games Workshop and the Forge. Back in the day, before everything went to molded plastic, his web shop is now open at modyourgame.com, and the new range is called Boom Blastic. That's booms and blasts in lightweight flexible plastic. Hundreds of special effect mods for your miniatures, sculpted with real-world physics in the detailing, projectile movement, airflow, thrust and spin, for every scale and every system. And yes, that includes Tabletop D&D. So the next time your sorcerer drops a fireball or your half-dragon lets loose their breath weapon, you can put the blast right there on the table. The shop is also home to Basius. They've got a Kickstarter coming up. It has a hand-pressed custom basing pad system. And I'll tell you now, it is far superior to the usual rolling pin style basing tools sold by many crafting suppliers. One resin pad and a roll of green stuff, and you can sculpt thousands of unique bases of any base size and shape your collection uses. Everything is handmade in the UK, 100% human sculpted, no AI anywhere in the process. Made to order and shipped by their casting partners and also former Games Workshop and Forge World veterans, ngcastings.com. And right now, if you buy any 2 sets, you get a discount on a third. Go and take a look, support independent artists doing beautiful work, and tell them the Sage sent you. My name is AJ Pickett, your Sage of Candlekeep, the Deck Arcane of D&D, expert on the imaginary, and master of monsters. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.